What did you steal?
Secrets.
Disclosure Day is Steven Spielberg's best film in 20 years.
Are they people?
No.
Are they human?
Oh my God.
Spielberg does this better than anybody in history.
I can see them. They're coming.
Disclosure Day, rated PG-13. Some material may be inappropriate for children under 13. In theaters Friday. Get tickets now.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome back everyone to another However podcast. And you join us at the beginning of another close season for Sunderland AFC, but this one is a little bit different to the ones that have come before. Because of course, for the first time in our history, we have qualified for a European competition through our league position, which means we've qualified for the Europa League, or its old equivalent in old money, the UEFA Cup, for the first time. But we also live in an age where qualifying for this competition is very different to what it used to be. So we're taking a bit of a risk today, and we're going to be trying to predict what might happen over the summer in terms of how many new recruits might arrive and who might leave, as well as many other things that we can try and predict to make ourselves look stupid when the season begins. So for something like this, we need the sharpest minds in the business. And first up, we have Andrew Smithson. Hello, Andrew.
I'm waiting for the. I'm waiting for the.
I saw you, mate.
Hello, mate. Yes, I'm.
Why would I make a joke about that, Andrew?
No, of course. It says more about me than it does you, mate. Yeah, we're predicting transfer targets and that, and all I want to know is why at the bottom of my list am I looking at Ibrahimovic?
Yes, the most famous line in Sunderland recruitment that will ever be. I think it even beats Xhaka in terms of the most famous quote that's ever been linked to Sunderland recruitment. But just very quickly, Andrew, if we'd done this last year, we probably would have been miles off the mark.
Oh, nobody saw that coming, did they? Last summer was just a whirlwind of players who you'd never heard of. You had a quick half hour or so to scramble around, form some sort of opinion on them, and then would sign them. It was like a signing every other day or so, and it was not what I thought, not how I thought we were going to approach things, but nice all the same. It was good fun this time last year.
It was very good fun, mess. Enjoyed it every day. I remember Gav panicking almost on a daily basis that we were having a new signing and he needed to get someone in to talk about them and find out about them and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, also joining us to put his neck on the line to try and call out what might happen during the summer, we have Bomber with us. Hello, Bomber.
Hello, Chris. Hello, Andrew. I was going to say, if you're asking for the sharpest minds in the business, there must have been a lot of people who were unavailable today to yeah, similar to Andrew. Looking forward to it. I've got Jan Koller at the bottom of my list, so he's been linked with a move to Sunderland every year since like 2002. So we'll keep up with traditions.
Yeah, well, I had Martin Ling and John Frayne on my list, but you have to be of a certain vintage to remember those. But yeah, Bomber, again, looking back to last summer, we would have probably said, 6 or 7 new players maybe. We're predicting Dan Neil's going to look comfortable in the Premier League, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it was exactly the same. I thought a lot of, because what tends to happen, Nottingham Forest aside, because obviously Nottingham Forest threw infinite amounts of money at 20,000 players when they came back up, didn't they? But generally speaking, teams come up, they sign a couple of either a couple of players who got relegated from the Premier League the previous season and try and pick those off, or a couple who are slightly past their best who might have been elite players once. But generally speaking, give chances to the players that helped them get there in the first place. And we just completely ripped up that copybook, really. We walked away from Wembley talking about this season that's just finished, saying, give Patterson a chance, give Dan Neil a chance. Let's see if we can re-sign Jack Clark. And there's a fair few players we thought might have been given a chance to prove themselves in the Premier League, and between them probably played about 10 minutes before getting shipped off. And at the time, I think there was probably a few eyebrows raised, especially with the Dan Neil one. And probably with the Anthony Patterson one as well, in particular, until, we saw Robin Roofs play 2 or 3 games and then realised actually there's a complete gulf in class there. And that's not disrespectful to Anthony Patterson. It's more telling of how good Robin Roofs is. But yeah, there was certainly a few eyebrows raised, and I would never have predicted that we did what we did. The signing of Granit Xhaka alone, let alone bringing in 10, 11 new players, 12 new players, and spending the money we did. I don't think anybody really could have foreseen that.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew, just on what Bomber was saying there, for the 3 promoted sides coming up, I mean, have we laid out the blueprint, or is it not quite as easy as that?
I think we have given fans of the newly promoted clubs higher expectations, but the clubs themselves will be looking and thinking, bloody hell, we've got no chance of doing a Sunderland, because it wasn't just a flash in the pan. We didn't just decide to go down this strategy last summer. That was the result of years and years of changing and moulding and developing a really clever transfer policy. What we saw last summer was just a continuation and maybe a supercharged version of what we'd done in the Championship and what we'd done in League One, where we were trying to find players with the hunger and the potential to grow. Every now and again, we added in a bit of experience, but you can't do that overnight. It takes time. And one of the things we had on our side was, because we'd managed our finances well as we went up through the leagues, we had a really good starting point in terms of what we could spend. I don't know if Ipswich have that, for example, because of being a bit of a yo-yo club. They might be hamstrung by deals that were made when they were last in the Premier League. Hull, they've had financial difficulties over recent seasons. And Coventry, I mean, their chairman's already had a bit of a dig at Sunderland's methods and suggested that Sunderland shouldn't have discarded the players that got them promoted so quickly. If I was a Coventry fan hearing that, I would be thinking, oh, does this mean basically it's going to be more of the same and we're just going to keep faith with the lads we've got? So I think the promoted clubs aren't starting from the same position as us. And whilst people might look at Sunderland and think, yeah, that's a good way to do business, it's easier said than done. You can't just replicate it from a standing start. You've got to grow it over time.
It's a bit of an absurd statement, isn't it, really? To criticise anyone who criticises what we've done this season or how we've gone about it, it can only either be a Newcastle fan or a Coventry fan, because it's ridiculous for somebody in that position to say, oh, well, what Sunderland have done doesn't quite sit right with me. We're 7th in the bloody league. We're going to play Europa League football next season. That's what Coventry fans will be aspiring to, because, rightly or wrongly, they saw us as equals for the seasons that we were in the Championship. They've won the league, whereas we went up through the playoffs. So they probably think, oh, we can go beyond what Sunderland have done this season. Now, whether they have the finances to do so is another question. But for the owner to say that is quite ludicrous, really. Like, we are fully vindicated in whatever approach we've done. We've taken the sentiment out of it, and if he's saying, "Oh, well, you should have given the players who got you there a bit of a chance," all well and good. But if in doing that we get relegated, you can guarantee that those players that we gave a chance to are going to want to carry on playing Premier League football and aren't going to stick around at the club anyway. So, yeah, no nonsense.
Essentially, if you're criticising what Sunderland have done this season, you're essentially saying Sunderland should have qualified for the Champions League this
Yeah,
season.
because we've underachieved and we should have
exactly.
done better. Yeah.
Yeah, because we've done it the wrong way. So clearly we should have done better, which is the only way we could have done better was qualify for the Champions League. But anyway, and I'd argue as well that they thought they were our equals, Bomber, that after that semi-final, I think they thought they were much better than us. And they won the moral semi-final.
Yeah, that's true.
So
true.
we're forgetting about that. But just on what Andrew said, Bomber, he did say something interesting about our plan, because from the Championship, Christian Speakman clearly had a plan, and then Gisolfi triggered another plan when we got promoted. And the club do look long term. We've got this long term. We had it in the Championship where we thought if we spend this amount, then it's going to put us in a really good position when we get into the Premier League. What are we going to be doing with that plan? Because has that now, because they were probably expecting, right, we'll go up to the Premier League, we'll stay up, then we build again to consolidate the season after, maybe have 2 or 3, then try and go on to the next level. First season we've come in, finished 7th, Europa League. Potentially, I imagine there wasn't too many people at the club saying we'll finish 7th and we need a plan for that.
No.
How does that impact the long-term plan?
I think there's a danger, isn't there? Everybody wants success and everybody wants success now, but we did have that kind of 5-year plan, didn't we? And we're quite clearly ahead of it, because even the most insane optimist in creating a 5-year plan wouldn't have suggested that we're going to qualify for Europe in our first season back in the Premier League. So it potentially throws a spanner in the works, because all of a sudden you're like, right, okay, we've now got to prepare for next season with European football. That said, history tells me that the ownership group and the people that make the decisions at the football club prepare for all contingencies. Last season, we would have had a plan for getting promoted and playing this season in the Premier League, and we'd have had a plan for if we didn't go up and we had another season in the Championship. Now, I'm not saying that at the start of this season or last summer, they were starting planning for this summer and saying, okay, well, we need a plan for if we get relegated, a plan for if we stay up, and a plan for if we get Europe. But our start to the season was so good that it was only just after the new year that we started faltering a little bit, and then obviously rallied. But that start to the season, that first, 17, 18 games, we were so good that I think at that point they were probably thinking, what if we can maintain this, then and potentially get European football next season, what does that look like? So I think they probably prepared for it. I think they probably made a contingency for it, albeit it might have been a little bit more of a hurried one compared to if things were going to plan, so to speak. And it sounds ridiculous to suggest that things haven't been going to plan, but they've been better than expected. So all of a sudden that we're probably 2 years ahead of even Kirill Louis-Dreyfus's wildest dreams of European football. So I think there's something in place. I think the people who make those decisions and look at the data and identify players are probably doing double shifts and working incredible amounts of overtime these last few months. But I don't think we're going to be stabbing in the dark or going into it without a plan. The only thing that, just to finish what I was saying on other clubs, and you said about us being a model or a blueprint for other teams. Like Andrew said, it all depends on the structure that they've got behind it. And I don't think, I might be wrong, I don't think Ipswich, Hull, Coventry have got that infrastructure at the top level. And like I said, the owners, the decision makers, the directors of football, in those sorts of positions, to have the forethought to put that data together to make strategic recruitment decisions. I think if they might look at us and go, well, we spent 160 million and we've stayed up. Forest spent 200 million, they stayed up. I think that will be the blueprint that if they can afford to, that they will adopt, rather than the strategic way in which we've gone about spending that 160 million pounds, if you know what I mean. So I think at least one of those clubs that are promoted will throw money at it because they've seen us do it last season. They saw Forest do it the season before, or maybe even the season before that. But I think it will be a lot more geared towards the Forest approach of let's just sign everybody for as much money as we possibly can and hope that some of the shit sticks to the wall. So yeah, it'll be kind of Sunderland-esque, but I don't see it being as accurate or as strategic.
Yeah. I mean, talking about that Europa League qualification, Andrew, and we're going to get into detail and we're going to go through position by position what we think might happen. You did panic about me asking about specific players because it's a case of who knows who someone might pluck out of the air to be a fantastic young player from somewhere in Europe. But in terms of the lists, Andrew, do you think, Bomber said people were working overtime probably since the January transfer window closed on who we're going to bring in. Do you think they had a list if we qualify for Europe and didn't qualify for Europe, or does that just not matter at all?
I, I, hmm, I don't know if they'll have entirely separate lists. I think they'll have players who they think could come into the club and work with us and maybe have, I don't know, colour code, a tab next to them or something that says, yeah, and if we're in Europe, this player becomes more of a priority, or this player becomes more likely because they have indicated they want to be at the club in Europe. So it will have been a factor in their thinking. Whether it was literally a case of we go with list 1 or list 2, I'm not so sure. I think it'll be a bit more nuanced, perhaps. But certainly, there was nobody waking up the day after the Chelsea game going, oh man, we're going to have to start ripping everything up and starting again.
I guess. Sorry, Andrew. I was going to say. I
Mhm.
guess you're right in that they probably have a list for playing Premier League football this season coming, and a list for playing Championship football this season coming. And obviously, they'll continually be identifying players in positions where they think we can improve. So regardless of whether whether we have Europa League football or not, they'll be looking for players to improve. I guess the difference will be is that they will probably now want to bring in more of those players to improve positions because of the squad depth that's going to be needed to manage Europe and a Premier League campaign, which is where most teams who qualify for Europe for the first time in donkey's years fall by the wayside. Like you see, Forest struggles this season, having to negotiate Europe and the Premier League. So I think you're right. On reflection, I think it might change your mind a little bit and come to your way of thinking. Is that there's a Premier League improvement list. There is a if we get relegated to the Championship list, and we just look to take in more players from that Premier League list if we got to Europe and obviously we're there.
Yeah, fair, fair, fair point, Bomber. I think definitely being in Europe does change certain things. I mean, it certainly changes what we can and can't spend because I think there's different financial restrictions we have to adhere to. There's also, and I've tried to get my head round this, there's also various quotas with regards homegrown players and who can be named in your 25-man squad. So again, and those rules, from what I gather, are different to the Premier League's requirements. So yeah, again, this will have all been mapped out and there'll be various bits of drawings and arrows and all sorts on whiteboards. Uh, it's going to look like a flipping CID unit, when they're trying to track down a serial killer or something. It's going to be pretty complex, but I am confident that we're not now suddenly scrabbling around. This has been a long-term goal. Maybe some of the players we signed in January were with a view to potentially Sunderland being in Europe. I, I think whatever happens in these next few months, it'll be an execution of a plan that has been worked on and grown over a period of time. I'd be flabbergasted if we make any panic buys or any knee-jerk decisions in the market.
Yeah, good points, gents. And how dare somebody ring on my doorbell while I'm recording a podcast? I mean, the cheek of it. But as I said, we are going to get into detail through the positions of the team and who might go and how many we might bring in. And the lads are going to make some predictions. But we'll do that after the break. So we'll be back very soon. And welcome back to How We're the podcast. And before the break, we talked about the general kind of position that Sunderland are in and how we might recruit. But we're going to get into it in a little bit more detail now. I'm going to start with you, Bomber, just on a couple of things that have been confirmed. In the first one, Dennis Serkin's leaving. I don't think it was a surprise to anyone that was the case. But there was that feeling that, again, once we qualified for Europe, he might be a good player to have. But he's been a fantastic player for Sunderland, and if he wants to go away and be a first choice player, which he should be really at a certain level, then nobody at Sunderland's going to kind of deny him that. And good luck to him, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's been one of the mainstays of the team when fit. There is that little asterisk there that he, especially in the League One days, was perpetually carrying some sort of knock or injury. And I think he can leave the club with his head held high and very proud of what he's achieved, because people wrote him off at Championship level and he proved them wrong. People wrote him off at Premier League level, and actually in those games where Ronaldo was banned or injured, he came in at left back and he was probably one of the best performing players for those games. So yeah, wish him all the best. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually went abroad rather than played for another Premier League team or dropped down to the Championship, because, like you said, he'll want to be first choice. He'll be first choice in many Championship teams, starting 11s, I think. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him go off to like France or Belgium or someone like that and play for like a top-ish team in those divisions, and really flourish. Because he, if you follow his Instagram, you can see he's perpetually on holiday. So he has a bit of wanderlust, likes a bit of travel, likes a bit of experience in other cultures, etc. So it wouldn't surprise me if he just went out to experience, like I say, a Belgium, a France, a Netherlands, somewhere like that, and all the very best to him.
I'll take your word for it, Bomber. I've never even seen Instagram, never mind Dennis Serkin's Instagram account. But one player I wanted to mention to you, Andrew, because you might have seen him maybe, certainly more than me, I know that. But Harrison Jones, he's on the bench 16 times this season, and I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I was slightly surprised when the club didn't trigger a 1-year extension on his contract. And I assume that was more down to him wanting more first-team football.
I assume so, yeah, because he'd made his breakthrough and got a couple of outings in the Championship. So to get a taste of it and then lose virtually a whole season where you're just at standstill, I can understand why you might think, is it time for me to move on? I did wonder, again, just going back to this homegrown quota, I did wonder if there was space for Harrison Jones. When we come to it, I also think there's an argument for keeping Zach Johnson or extended his deal. He's done well on loan at York, from what I can gather. But having then dug a little bit deeper into the rules, you don't have to name 4 players who've come through your own academy. It's just, if you want to have a maximum of 25 players, 4 of them have to have come through that route. So we'll be able to name 17 foreign players, whether Harrison Jones is here or not. So there probably has been a decision of, he's a good lad, he's a good trainer, he's of an age now where we let him free, we let him go and settle down roots elsewhere and start building his career. Reserve team football, he's beyond that now. So, yeah, like Bomber said with Serkin, I wish the lad well. He's a tidy player. He'll have a good career somewhere. But Sunderland, I think, have just overtaken a lot of a lot of players who were on those fringes.
Yeah. I'm just gutted that I couldn't carry on doing my keeping up with the Joneses line when we had three of them on the bench, Harrison, Jaden, and Jensen this season at times. But moving on, Bomber. Just before we get into position by position, how big a squad do we need? Because at the moment, I'm looking at our squad and I'm looking at the people who've announced that they're leaving, and I've got around 21 players if I count 3 goalkeepers. But in that 21, I've got Ajay Lise who's going to come back. I've got Bar who's going to come back, and Alexis who's going to come back. Who none of which have really featured in the first team. So at the moment, we've got quite a small squad, haven't we?
Yeah. Yeah, we've got a very, very good starting 11, let's say 14, but past that, what we would be left with if the season started, on the 1st of July, let's say, when the loan players come back and the contracts expire, etc. We're quite thin on the ground. I genuinely think if in order to maintain a Premier League and a Europa League season, you almost need 2 starting 11s. So you're talking 22 players that can potentially play for first team football and be a starter. And then you probably fill that with another 6, I would say, who are more squad players but can come in. I reckon you need. I think you really realistically need 28 to 30 players who aren't just ones that are making the numbers up. The problem is obviously keeping all those 28 players happy. Now it makes it a little bit easier for us because we will have Premier League football, we'll have Europa League football, we'll have FA Cup, we'll have League Cup. I don't know if we're fielding an under 23s in the Papa Johns or whether we bother doing that. I'm not sure. So there will be more opportunities for those players, but obviously the goal for everybody essentially is going to be to play Premier League and Europa League football. So that will be the difficulty, is getting the depth, but the depth is good enough, but also filled with players who are who are content to not play every single week, and that is the fine balance. And there aren't many teams outside of those perpetual Champions League qualifiers who manage to do that.
Yeah. Well, it'd be interesting. So we'll work off that figure around 22-ish, and we'll get into some of these positions, because we'll start with goalkeeper, and we're going to go with you, Andrew. There's a few situations to maybe sort out here. You go from the very top. Potentially, we might have to bat off some big bids for roofs. Let's see what happens. Who knows what's going to happen in the World Cup? What's Patterson going to want to do after he's had some first-team football at Millwall? There's been some good news with Matty Young signing a new contract. The expectation is he's going to go back out on loan. Be interesting to see what level he's at. But you'd expect them to try and have expect them to have 2 who were expected with the first team, and is Simon Moore, because he signed a new 1-year contract. Is he going to be below those 2? What structure we're going to have there?
I think yeah, it'll be between 2 number ones who'll be expected to play, and Moore will just be a sub. He'll be somebody who does the warm-ups with the players prior to kickoff and what have you. I think the goalkeeping department is probably the one we'll see the least movement with. When we go through the other parts of the pitch, there's a lot of work needs to be done in certain other areas. Whereas for me, unless we get like astronomical money in for roofs, or assuming, of course, his head hasn't been turned and he demands a leave, demands a transfer, I think we stick with what we've got. Yes, you'd imagine Young goes out on loan again, because he seems to be getting better and better every year. It would be a bit of a shame if he stagnated and spent a season on the bench when he could be getting game time elsewhere and at a good level. Elborg, for me, I think there's a few people aren't convinced by him yet, but I'm okay with him so far. And from what we understand, he has had quite a bit of European football. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets the odd game in the Europa League, particularly in games where we're maybe playing teams from pot 3 and pot 4 who aren't as strong as what you'd expect in the Premier League. And yeah, I just feel because we've got so much to do in other aspects, because Robin Roofs was so solid last year, it would be daft to do too much. The only big question mark for me is Patterson and whether he gets a stay of execution or whether it is time to sell him. If we are to fend off big money bids for somebody like Roofs, we probably are going to have to sell 2 or 3 players like Patterson. Do you know what I mean? To make up the shortfall. And if you do, say for argument's sake, I mean an English goalkeeper with plenty of games under his belt, is it wild to say you could maybe get 7 or 8 million for him? You know, a couple of players along those lines, a couple of sales along those lines, and suddenly you're in a better position to bat away when the vultures come for the bigger names in the squad.
Yeah. I mean, Brommer, what do you think? Because Andrew said Patterson might be the one to leave, but he said he doesn't see much movement, so that would leave Roofs, Elborg, and Patterson to fight it over the number 1 spot, and of course Elborg and Patterson to fight over the place on the bench. But do you see Patterson leaving?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think how we've finished the season in the goalkeeping department with Patterson not being at the club and the other 3 being at the club is exactly how we'll start next season. I was initially quite worried about Roofs potentially leaving, but I do feel obviously every player has his price, and if someone like Chelsea, who love throwing money at goalkeepers, turn out with a 50 or 60 million pound bid, I don't think we're going to turn that down. But I certainly now that the dynamic just changes, doesn't it? As soon as you get European football, the dynamic changes because all of a sudden you're offering a lot of players their first opportunity of playing in UEFA competition, which is a bargaining chip for a lot of clubs when trying to poach players off of other teams, who are in the same league or competing for places in the Premier League. We don't have that to be held against us now. We don't have that carrot to be dangled in front of our players to prize them away from us. So my opinion on Roof is quite strongly that he'll be our number 1 goalkeeper next season. So yeah, I don't see any movement in that's in our squad in terms of how it looks like. So I think Patterson will be moved on, and the other 3 will be here.
Yeah, so just to confirm, Brommer, if Patterson leaves, like
Yeah.
Andrew says, for let's say 8 million,
Mhm.
you don't think there's any need to bring anyone else in? You're happy with Roofs, Elborg, and Simon Moore as a 3?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. They said Moore will be one who will sit on the bench if Elbow gets injured or, for whatever reason, Roofs drops out the side. But it's very rare that keepers stay out the side for very long, bar serious injury. Roofs, I couldn't tell you how many games did he miss this season. 3 was it? If that, where he was unavailable for selection. I don't even think it was possibly that.
Yeah, he missed 3 league games.
Yeah. And that's pretty exceptional for a goalkeeper. There's a reason why goalkeepers are consistently the most capped players, are consistently the most appearance makers. If you look at like an all-time top 20 list of Premier League appearance makers, at least 50% of them will be goalkeepers. I don't think we need to worry too much about contingency planning in that department because, I think the backup keeper is okay in short spaces. I wouldn't want to go into a season and have him as number 1, at least not yet. I've not seen enough of him, and I don't think in the little bits that I have seen, I don't think he's necessarily ready. But Reefs, if he stays, Reefs is going to play 33 games again next season. And let's say he misses 5. Those 5 games aren't going to define our season. So yeah, I would be happy going in with the same 3. I don't think we need to change it, and I don't think really you can at this moment in time improve on it. Because I don't think we're getting in a better goalkeeper than Roofs, and I don't think we're probably getting a better reserve goalkeeper who's happy to sit on the bench. So yeah, I'm happy.
Well, sticking with you, Bomber, for right back, because our options at the moment, from what I can see, is Nordy Michele, who we love at centre half as well, and can play everywhere as far as we're concerned. I think, as Andrew said, Martin, said we'd like to clone him to play in all positions across the back 4. And we've got Trey Hume as well, who might potentially be off to Real Madrid for God knows how much money. But you know, you'd be surprised if those 2 left, and they're 2 very good options. And the Getrauda thing, as far as I've seen, hasn't been confirmed yet.
Yeah, so that I think my answer to this is lies almost exclusively as to or dependent on whether we sign Getreuda or not. If we sign Getreuda and keep Hume and Mukiele, because if we're being honest, Mukiele is one of the best fullbacks, if not the best fullback this season in the league. You know, I don't think that's too grand a statement for me to say. I know I am one for controversial statements, but I think that's probably one of my milder ones.
Well, who were France got, by the way, to keep them?
Yeah, I know. So again, I think there's almost like 2 parts to this answer. If we keep Getreuda and we keep Hume, I don't think we need to bring anybody in to strengthen that necessarily. Especially if you consider that Luke and I can play right back, to have 4 potential or to have 4 possible right backs, and in my opinion, have the best right back in the league last season as your number 1. I don't really see how you improve on that. So my answer is almost the same as the goalkeeping one. You know, bar exits, which I don't think there will be any. You know, I don't think for 1 minute Trey Hume is going to go off and play for Real Madrid. If he does, I'll virtually shake his hand and say, fair play to you, Trey. Go off and
Enjoy.
and yeah, get your La Liga title and your Champions League and everything else. But yeah, I don't see any movement out, and unless Getreuda doesn't get signed. If Getreuda doesn't get signed, I think we'll bring another one in, but it's going to be somebody perhaps that little bit younger who could play behind Mukiele and Hume and be happy with the development opportunity.
Yeah, just send them with a message for Jose to say Luke O'Nien says hi. After that friendly against Roma all those years ago. But Andrew, moving on to the left side, it's interesting because we talked about losing Sirkin. Last season, we tried Masuaku, bring him on for a short space of time. Helder as well was someone who was in the squad, but left as well. Looking at the squad now, the way I look at it is we've only really got Reinildo as a natural left back, and he was 32 in January. He's also out of contract at the end of next season. Could this be a position where we see a really big signing?
There's more chance of it now that Sirkin's made his decision known. I do think at left back we need somebody. Whether that's a big name signing yet, or whether it's just somebody to complement Reinildo, I'm not quite sure. The defence was another area where I thought we'll not focus too much of our spending. We brought a lot of players in last summer in the defence, and I think we are perhaps going to try and keep money back for higher up the pitch. So I'd be surprised if it was a statement signing at fullback, personally speaking. But there's got to be some work done there. I fully agree with Bomber's caveat about how a lot of it depends on what happens with Truda, because he can cover a couple of positions. Him being in the squad means you're more able to use Mukiele in different positions. So
But I'd just say, I'd just quickly interrupt there, Andrew. I think it's slightly different on the left-hand side, though, because Gachada's been played, naturally at right back. I don't think in a Premier League game, unless it was an emergency, he'd put over the left. I do think Ronaldo being the only natural left-sided defender, left-footed player who could play fullback, you do think we need another one in the squad.
We do, yeah, we do. But who that is and whether they are a cost a pricier option or not, I think depends on whether we're also having to try and fill the void by Gertrude. If he stays, we probably do only need a left back. If he goes, you're then looking at needing a couple of options in defence. So I think it's a case of dominoes there. But certainly we do need another option at left full back. I know Hume sometimes goes out there, but I don't think we get the best from him. You mentioned Shelder, bless him. Shelder, Elise, Masuaku. There's a list there. There's another couple you could add on to that list. You could probably look to move all of those on. And if that happens, you lob their wages together, that might cover the cost of a very good player. I mean, I don't want to be rude and single people out, but you can't imagine Niall Huggins is going to feature for us. Timothy Pembele's another fullback, although arguably he's more right-sided than left-sided. In a perfect world, these lads would be moving on, and we'd be able to get somebody who you could hang your hat on to play. Like with a lot of things, Chris, it's all moving plates, and until we know what's happening with Gertrude, the rest of the dominoes won't start to fall.
Yeah, that's true. But I would still, even if Gertrude does sign tomorrow, I still don't think the need for a left-sided player might change too much. But Bomber, going into the centre of defence, I'm looking at, I mentioned McKaylee already, Dan Ballard, Omar Alderete. Luke O'Nine's going to potentially be an interesting one. Jensen Seelt is going to come back. I'm not quite sure what the situation is there with his loan signing, but he's contracted till 2028. Ajay Alicia has got another year in his contract, but he had injury problems when he went out on loan to Portsmouth. So that's 6 players there. And we're talking about Gertrude, who could slot in there as well. Do you see any signings in the centre of defence?
I mean, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I don't really. I think it's a fine balance, isn't it, between having players who can play in there and players that we want to play in the Premier League. Like you said, we got Jensen Seal, we got a couple of the others who can play there. Do we? I mean, maybe I'm doing him a disservice. I haven't seen or heard of him all this season, and he didn't do too badly at the back end of last and pre-season, etc. But do we want him playing Premier League football for us at the back when you compare him, even what he could potentially be, compared to Ballard and Alderete and Mukiele and everyone else? Probably not. So it's a difficult one because the other alternatives are players that we are either going to lose or have earmarked for other positions. So, for example, Ronaldo has filled in at centre back. Sometimes when we've gone to a back three, or one of the centre backs has gone off injured, Ronaldo's slotted in there, and Hume's gone out onto the left, or Sirkin's come in. Actually, probably not Sirkin because he only tended to play when Ronaldo wasn't available. But my point is that once you get past Ballard, Alderete, and O'Nine, and let's say Gertrude and Mukiele, then anything that comes after that is somebody who wasn't deemed good enough last season and has been loaned out or has been stuck in the reserves. So why do we think that they are going to be good enough for the following season, regardless of how many extra games we're going to play? I don't think there'll be anything outgoing. I think we definitely need at least another one if we want to be strong on all fronts. Ballard has had a couple of injuries this season. Alderete's had a couple of injuries this season. Lukanein's probably the only one who hasn't. So between those three, if we're saying those are our three kind of mainstay centre-backs, are they going to play a 38-game Premier League season, plus at least 8 games in the Europa League, plus the FA Cup, plus the League Cup? Probably not. I do think we need somebody to challenge them, because whilst Lukanei has done fantastically when he's come in, and however much I love the bloke, first names on the team sheet, if they're fit, in those positions are Dan Ballard and Omar Alderete. They don't have any real competition. Do you know what I mean? So to have to bring somebody in to compete with them who is alongside them in terms of ability and stature and performance, I think we do need, if we're going to be competitive on 4 fronts. And when I say competitive, I don't mean, let's go for the quadruple. I mean, not have our Premier League season negatively affected by needing to compete in those other competitions.
Yeah, just very, very quickly, Bomber, Stephen, put my teeth back in. Luke O'Nien, 1 year left on his contract. Will he still be a Sunderland player next season? If you're talking about bringing in one more, will he stay at Sunderland, or will he want to get more games elsewhere?
He'll want to stay. He'll want to be with us. I don't think there's any doubt that Luke O'Nien leaves this summer.
Even if he's not getting games, or even getting on the bench?
Even if he's not getting games or getting games or being on the bench, he's lived his dream. He's already he outwardly says, that he's achieved more than he ever thought that he would. There is a chance, if we're talking about Simon Moore and Elbow potentially playing against pot 3, pot 4 teams in the Europa League, Luke O'Nien's going to be doing the same. So there is, unless the club move him on, which I do not know why, I do not understand why they would. He'll be with us next season, just so that for that opportunity to play, to say he's played in the Europa League,
to lift the Europa League,
basically. And if he's not, he hasn't played. It's only circumstance that kind of brought him into the team this season, and at least outwardly or publicly, there's been absolutely no sign of him being discontent about not playing as many times this season as he might have liked. He's a pure, what's the modern terminology? He's a pure vibesman. He's the Labrador of the team. He's just happy to run around and be involved in the dressing room, be involved in the training pitch, get everyone together and be a true leader. And I think that's what matters more to him, is being a leader, whether it's on the pitch, off the pitch, whether he's playing week in, week out, or whether he's coming on for 20 minutes or playing 10 games a season. He's just happy to be there. And I think he loves the club too much.
Feel dirty now talking about vibes on this podcast. And sound like my teenage lad and his mates. But and anyway, this conversation will look silly when Roofs and Elbow get injured and Luke O'Nien plays in goal for the second half of the season. But moving into the middle of the park, Andrew, I'm looking at 5 options. If we throw Chris Rigg in as a central player, Granit Xhaka, of course, Diarra, Siddiqui, Lafayette, and Chris Rigg. Xhaka's contracts run until 2028, so you never know, we might see some movement on that contract one way or another. It'll be interesting with 2 years to go. With those 5, Andrew, would you expect to see some movement in the centre of midfield?
Yeah, I do. This is an area where I think we need to bring in players regardless of whether anybody leaves. I mean, we talk about central midfielders. What is a midfielder these days? You could throw Hume into that list if you wanted, In fact, I think I've got Hume earmarked for positions at fullback, in the middle, pushing up front. The guy's going to be all over the shop. But yeah, in terms of our traditional 3, I do see Rigg now as a serious contender for that group. But even still, I feel just in terms of depth and the amount of games we've got to get through, we need to bring bodies in. Siddiqui as well. He's probably the one I'm most fearful of us selling. And if he goes, he'll be a massive hole to fill, just in terms of energy and durability. So this would be a position, Chris. Yeah, I think we need to do a bit. And if you look at who we're linked with so far, I know a lot of this at this stage of the season, this stage of the summer, is just, paper talk and trying to fill column inches. But a lot of the names do look to be midfielders, lads from Europe with a bit of a decent profile, have maybe played international football or European competition. So this is a spot I think we will have earmarked as needing a bit of work.
Okay, so just to sum up, Andrew, because there's a severe lack of predictions going on here. Is Siddiqui going to be a Sunderland player next season, and how many are we bringing in?
Yeah, I'll predict Siddiqui does stay. We're in a great position at the moment to fend things off. We're protected with a good contract on Siddiqui. He loves it here. He's a bright lad and can probably see his game progressing more with us than he would taking a risk moving somewhere else. So he stays and we sign two more to go along with that lot.
And midfielders. Oh, Bomber's not feeling two. What do you reckon, Bomber?
I think Siddiqui goes.
Ooh.
Unfortunately, it would break my heart after how I praised him in the Young Player of the Season pod record.
Oh, no.
It will break my heart, but I think he's probably the only high-profile performer that we lose this season. I think someone like a Liverpool or maybe not a Chelsea, but certainly like a Manchester United, a Liverpool, see him. He has a decent World Cup and throws, and I don't think I'm exaggerating this, throws 70 million at him, 75 million, 80 million at us for him.
Was it 100 million with Anderson? Have you seen that?
Yeah. But I think he is displayed well enough that a Champions League team would quite happily throw 75 million, 80 million at him. And I don't think, as much as it breaks my heart, I don't think that's an offer that we can turn down. So I think we lose Siddiqui. I think he's the only one of that kind of, the indispensables that we lose. And I think we bring in two, possibly three, depending if we lose anyone else. But I think certainly two with Siddiqui. So lose Siddiqui, bring two in.
Okay, interesting stuff. Go on, Andrew.
Can I throw in a quick wild card, please? I think with League Cup games, FA Cup games to consider, if he's happy to come back to the club, Alan Brown, we're always told, is a real positive voice. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a position for him, not in the Premier League. I can't see him getting Premier League games. But if having him in a couple of League Cup games, a couple of European, a long European trip, I'm envisaging like the back of beyond. If you've then got a big Sunday game coming up against one of the top teams, do you say to Granit Xhaka, have the night off? Alan Brown goes along. Is that mental, genuinely, or is that a possibility?
I think it's a possibility. It's all dependent on where Alan Brown sees his career at this stage, isn't it? If he's happy to be, a very definitive backup player that will play no minutes in the Premier League, but will play the odd, have the odd cameo appearance in the League Cup and the FA Cup and maybe the odd Europa League game, possibly. He could certainly do a job there but he would be one just to make the numbers up. And like I say, I think it depends on where he sees his career now, whether he still wants to play every week or not.
Yeah, not for me. I think he burnt his bridges. I think he made a lot of comments when he first left.
Fair. Yeah, that's fair.
Did he?
Yeah, he made a lot of comments that it wasn't fair on the lads.
It was quite bitter, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't great, some of the things. I mean, it wasn't vicious, but he just said it really wasn't good the way Sunderland kind of discarded those
Maybe it was a
players.
sign for Coventry.
But yeah, he's got a year left on his contract, 31 years old. And actually, just quickly, you mentioned one of my pet hates with central midfield, Andrew. The youngins these days with FIFA, you talk about central midfielders and you go, oh yeah, he's a CDM. It's like, all right. Or he's a cam. What the hell are you talking about? He's a central midfielder or he's not, basically. He's a number 10. But anyway, moving on. Let's go to a wide bomber. I suppose one of the big questions straight away is, Dingra going to be out permanently? We've got the future of Mundell to talk about. Does Traore get a new contract? When I'm looking at the list, I'm seeing only Talby and Angulo as the only certainties. Are we expecting a big signing here?
I think so. I think this is where the mainstay of our spend is going to be, if I'm being honest. You know, if you look down the list of the season, you'd say that we're probably oversubscribed on left wingers, right wingers, midfielders, etc. So if I'm looking down the list that I've got in front of me here, so we've got obviously Lefay can play out on the left. We prefer him in the middle, but he can play out on the left. You've then got Talby, Isidore has played either wing, Angulo, Mayenda has played either wing, Mundell, Traore, Jocelyn, all can play left wing, right wing,
Got about Jocelyn, actually.
interchange. And apparently, he was very, very good on international duty. Well, as we're recording yesterday, I think, or maybe the day before, I can't remember. So I'm excited to see some more of him. But I think we lose Traore. I think his contract ends this. He was only signed on a 1-year contract anyway, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So I know that there was a club option for another year, and I don't think we take that. I think he's been too injury prone. He's not played enough. I think Mundell obviously has also been injury prone, but I just don't think he's the level we're looking at now. If I think another season in the Championship may have brought him on further, but he's a good Championship wide player. I don't think he's ever going to make it in the Premier League. I might be wrong. So he'll be one that I would probably move on. And again, similar to my thoughts on Sirkin, it wouldn't surprise me if he went back out to to Belgium or went over to France, somewhere like that, and kind of tried to rebuild his career.
Yeah. So
go on, Chris.
Sorry, I was just going to say that. Are you saying that we need two big signings?
I think we need two pretty it's difficult to call them marquee signings because no one has ever bloody heard of them at the point at which we sign them. Two, with the benefit of hindsight, marquee signings in the wide position.
To go straight in the team or to really push to be
to go straight into that starting 11. Or not to necessarily replace Talby or Angulo or Jocelyn, but at that level,
the same level.
At least the same level, yeah. Put somebody who you'd put in on either wing and wouldn't go, oh bloody hell, we've not got Talby in today, we got this lad in instead. Somebody who'd go, actually, I'd rather have them in than Talby. Someone who we can have a debate about who's better. That sort of level is what I'm talking about, and I think that's. I mean, we possibly might even bring in three if we're committed to Lefay being in the centre, and in terms of what we'll possibly have. Spoiler alert, because obviously Mayenda and Isidore can both play on either wing, and just as a little bit of a spoiler alert, I think both of those will go next season, this summer. So I can't count them as wingers. So in terms of what we're looking at, in my opinion, for next season, without bringing anybody in, we're looking at Talby, Angulo, and Jocelyn. And I'm not counting Lefay because I only want to see him in the centre midfield. So that's three wingers to fill two positions plus backup. So we might even bring in three, but I certainly think two kind of headline signings, or what we would consider headline signings this time next season, and a third who is along the lines of another Jocelyn, where or an Angulo, where we're talking about potential, can come in, do a job, perform well, but is really one for the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, just to bring you in on the kind of flank positions, Andrew, because I think it's a big one next season, as Bomber said. So Bomber's saying Adingra's going to leave, Mundell's going to leave, Traore's going to leave, Talby and Angulo are going to be still there, and we need two. Do you think that sounds about right?
And Jocelyn, you forgot Jocelyn again.
Oh, and Jocelyn. Yeah, I keep forgetting about Jocelyn. Don't know why.
I agree with pretty much everything Bomber says there. Yeah, I do think this is an area where we go big, and we haven't done this yet. But if we are to sign a player from another Premier League club who is therefore ready, I know there's always going to be doubts about whether they're going to be able to fit in and that. But as much as you can expect, it would be that position. So a bit like what we thought we were getting with Adingra, somebody who has got Premier League games under their belt. We've got enough of terms of projects out wide now, lads who can come on over the next few months and improve their game. I really think this is where we need to push the boat out and bring in somebody who has developed elsewhere and is now in their peak years. It was probably, particularly out on the right, it was probably the position Lebris had the most frustration with over the season. It's probably the position fans, most of all, had question marks over. Adingra, again, if we sell him for a decent price, that just reduces the need to sell off one of the crown jewels. Traore is a funny one because you can't leave the lad hanging on until the last couple of days of the window. But bizarrely, a bit like how he was last season, Traore could be a decent option if you can't get your first choices in. But because of his injuries since he signed, he probably does move on. And yeah, for me, I think we'll see at least one, call it marquee signing. The other one, I reckon it might be a bit more like somebody along the lines of Isidore or Mayenda, who Bomber quite rightly says we have been told could do positions on the wing. And Sunderland do like players who are versatile. We do like wingers who can play on either flank. We do like players who are just deemed an attacker and can play as a centre forward or in a slightly deeper role. So I think we might kind of fudge it there, get one out and out winger and get somebody who can do a job there, but also provide backup in other spots.
Yeah, well, that brings us on to the strikers, Andrew, and I'm going to start with you because Bomber's already shown his cards a little bit and said that he reckons Isidore and Mayenda are going to leave, which would only leave Brian Brobby as that number one striker. It's a really tough position to deal with because when you've got someone like Brian Brobby, and the other thing I want to ask you about is there was rumours about us potentially having to bat away some interest for Brian Brobby, so that I want your input on that. But the other thing is if let's say those two do leave and we need another body and Brian Brobby's still at Sunderland, it's a tough one to pitch to someone to say, come in as number two to Brian Brobby, isn't it?
Exactly. It's a very tough sell. It's a bit like when we were talking about those midfield slots. We were worried constantly last year. What happens if Jacques is injured? Well, you can't plan for that because nobody's going to want to sit on the bench and just watch a player of that caliber like get picked ahead of them all of the time. And I think it would be the same with Broby. Like, there's very little chance of you getting in ahead of him at the moment because he's integral to our style of play, which is why, referring back to me wide players suggestion, I think we then go for somebody who can do different jobs and isn't just purely backup for Broby and then ends up getting splinters in his backside because he can't get in the team in any scenario. I wouldn't be surprised if we get bids for him over the summer. Sadly, there was an element of damaged goods around him because he'd had a move to the Bundesliga that didn't work out. He had these very difficult personal circumstances going on in the background that was impacting him. The fact that he's now gone to the Premier League, put all of that behind him, shown that he's a consistent performer at a very high level, clubs will now be rethinking their stance on him, and we could well have interest. I think what goes in our favour is the fact that we have given him a home. We did take a chance on him when other clubs might not have done. So that gives us a bit of credit. And he himself, he obviously backs himself and he'll be confident in his own abilities. He might look at it and think,
Pretty confident fella, mine, isn't he?
he is. So maybe he might not think this. He might not think this then, but clubs might just think, do we let him stay at Sunderland, improve his finishing? Because his chance conversion rate isn't great. So hopefully he improves that with us. I'm like Bummer. I think he stays. I think he has to stay. He's vital to us. Lads like Hamia, Abdullah Bar. Yeah, sorry, boys, but off your pop. Even if it's a case of we rip up their contract, we might have a look at Abdullahi. We might have a look at Geragusen and Toutier off in pre-season. But yeah, Isidore and Mayenda probably do go. If they stay, great. But if not, we're going to have to get some bodies in to fill their positions.
So when you say bodies, so if both of those leave, we're getting 2 in, Andrew.
I think it'll be 2 in and 2 out. Yeah.
Okay. And Bomber, you already said you think those 2 will leave. Are you in the same position? Do you think Brian Brobby will be a Sunderland player next season? And if those 2 do leave, like you're predicting, do we bring 2 in to replace them?
Yeah, I'm thinking the same, to be honest, Chris, mate. Brobby was another one similar to Roofs for me, who at one point in the season thought, I don't think we'll keep hold of him. But given our successes of the season, I now am infinitely more confident that he'll be a Sunderland player. There was a period of time at the start of the season where he was quite clearly second fiddle behind Isidore. And then he kind of grew into into that position and made in the starting 11, made it his own, excelled in it, has been something completely different to what the Premier League has seen in a long, long time, which makes him an attractive prospect to any club. But again, similar to Roofs, clubs don't have the carrot to dangle in front of our players of European football that we can't offer them this season. And I think that'll be the difference between Brobby staying and going. Like I said, Mayanda, Isidore, love them both to death. Love what they've done for the club to get us to where we are. But I think Isidore in particular, well, both of them, I think they want to play first team football. They want to play somewhere where they can play 30 games a season and be a hero.
Yeah, can I, just very quickly on that, because Lebris did say he needed a conversation with Isidore to turn around and say, actually, you're looking to move away to play first team football, and maybe he goes to a club that were in a similar position to Sunderland, maybe when he joined us.
Mm-hmm.
But Bomber, Lebris said there's something to be said about being second choice striker at the 7th best club in the biggest league in the world, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It will be, I do think it's another one where the decision will be down to the player. I don't think there'll be anyone in the hierarchy at Sunderland looking to push Isidore out the door. I just think, that season in the Championship where he was the man, he was the man. And even though Sunderland fans still adore him and we still love him, he's no longer the man at Sunderland. And I don't know whether I don't want to say whether his ego can cope with that, because he doesn't come across to me as an egotistical person anyway. I mean, you have to have a certain amount of ego if you're going to be a professional footballer, but he certainly doesn't seem to come across as it's all about me. He clearly loves the club. I just wonder whether there's agent whispering in his ear, telling him, you could go here, you could go and play for Lille, or you could go and play for Marseille or someone like that and be their main striker, and whether that might influence his decision. My end is slightly different because he really hasn't had that much of an opportunity at all. And having been at the Chelsea game and watching the players kind of walk around the pitch, and I don't know if either of you were there and thought the same. It felt like a goodbye from Mayenda. He went out by himself to the corner that did his old kind of arm raise, and everyone goes, "Way, way, way," by himself, clapped the fans, and then kind of disappeared into the crowd and was not really seen again. Plus, you've got the added fuel to that particular fire of, I think it might have been either a relative or his agent put an Instagram post on that said, "One last dance," suggesting that that was the final time we'd see him in a Sunderland shirt. But I think Mayenda has probably got more of a grievance, I guess, against not playing than Isidore has. So I think Mayenda will be gone. I think Isidore, if he wants to go and he gets his head turned somewhere else, I think he'll be gone, and I think he probably will. So it's again, like Andrew said, 2 in, 2 out for me in the striking department, and one will be kind of like happy another development opportunity to play behind the Brobby and another who will both fight out for the number 9 jersey, not number 9 jersey, but you know what I mean, that central striker role.
Yeah. Famous number 9 and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Well, yeah. So we've gone through the positions, and it looks like roughly, and I think you both made it clear that a lot of these have got caveats depending on players leaving and all of that, and the need for replacing players who might leave. I think you've all agreed that all the players on the periphery are going to leave, the likes of Barr and Elise and potentially Alan Brown and all the players like that who haven't really been featured in the first team. But you've both roughly got about 8 players, essentially,
To come in.
which is based on players leaving, of course, but you've both got that 8 number. And the only major departure predicted is you, Bomber, with Siddiqui leaving. I think Andrew, maybe wishful thinking, but Andrew reckons all our big players are going to still be with us next season. So let's keep our fingers crossed. Just very quickly as well, last predictions, just in terms of the amount of money spent. Bomber, if we're talking 8 players, we spent around best part 200 million last season. So how much does those 8 players add up to? How much do you see us spending this summer, do you reckon?
I wouldn't be surprised if we threw, and I'm basing this on my prediction coming true that Siddiqui goes for 70, let's say. I wouldn't be surprised if we spent another 150 million.
Oof.
Genuinely,
Right.
I wouldn't be. We're talking about 8 players. We're talking about a centre-back that we're probably looking at, I would say, probably spending about 20, 25 on. If we're getting 2 headline wingers that I've predicted, you're probably looking at 30 each for each of them. And then 2 other strikers that, again, they're 25 to 40 apart. Like I say, 150 million offset with the Siddiqui 70, I think.
Okay, interesting. So about 150 million on 8 players from Bomber. Andrew, how much do you reckon we'll go through this summer?
I reckon it was about 180 we spent last time, didn't we?
Yeah.
Before January, you can throw in another 20 million there. I think we spend a similar amount of money, but just on fewer players. It's weird because when you first think about the squad, you think, we're nearly there. We don't need much. But yeah, as you say, we go through it in a bit more detail, and we probably do need to bring about 8 bodies in, rather though than spread that cost around the 14 or so we signed last year. I think we spend similar amounts on fewer players. We can afford to do it. I don't think other clubs can, but we seem to be relatively well, financially speaking, to do that. You've got to bear in mind wages. I know we pay relatively small wages compared to other teams. You might find that some of our player wages go up. But yeah, I think we're spending big figures again. It's not like last year where we had to do it to give us a chance to survive, and we're in a better position now, and we can afford to be a little bit more choosy. And if the right players don't become available, we'll walk away. But in an ideal world, another 180 million, and hey, where they come from, I don't know. I reckon a couple will be from Belgium. We see there's a bit of value there.
Yeah.
And do you remember last year we got linked with some like mad wonder kids from Barcelona and Real Madrid? Do you remember there was a couple of names? I'm sure there was one who played in the Club World Cup, and everyone was thinking, I will keep an eye on him because we're going to sign him. Wouldn't it be lovely if we, now that we're a bit more of an attractive proposition, we go back in for some absolute star of the future?
Well, they sound expensive, Andrew, and I'm going to go with you first on this one, first dibs on this one, because Diarra is our record signing for around 30 million. Do you see us breaking that? And what do you see us going up to?
Yes, I see us breaking that. Uh, as I say, if we go for a ready-made winger, I I think, particularly if they're from the Premier League, you pay an extra tax on that. I wouldn't be shocked if we spent 50, 55, 60 million on somebody like that. The club back their judgment. The club do all of the preparation. It wouldn't just be a punt. If they've got somebody in mind who they think can take us to the next level, I think the club will and should pull the trigger.
Yeah, bloody hell. 50, 60 million bomber. Do you reckon we'll go that high?
I'm not sure as high as 50 or 60 because what's our current record? It's DR, isn't it? It
Yeah.
was 31, maybe something like that.
I mean, it's amazing to think Ndong was this time last summer.
Wow, that in itself is ridiculous. But I think if we work on that basis, I don't see us doubling what we spent on Diarra necessarily, but I could certainly see us going in the 40s for a striker to play to challenge Brobby, or one of those front three positions that I said that we're going to bring. What did I say? Four in on those positions, maybe five. One of those, I think, we'll start with the 4. I think, and I'm not talking 4.5 million. I'm talking double digits. That'll start with a 4. So I'll say, in terms of a prediction, I'll say by the end of the summer transfer window, our record transfer signing will be 44 million.
Well, as soon as you said 4, I had Will Grigg in my head, which was an awful thought. But last one, gents. We're moving on from Sunderland a little bit because you've both predicted another exciting summer ahead for Sunderland. But we do have a World Cup. Bomber, is it coming home?
No, no chance. I would absolutely love it. I mean, it's been coming home for far too long, and I think we've had far better squads and far worse opposition to come up against in previous renewals of the World Cup. I think it's going to lie with France or Spain again. I think we'll probably do what England normally do. If you take Gareth Southgate era aside, in that we'll struggle through qualifying, we'll get to the quarterfinals and get knocked out by some team who will eventually go on and get to the final and probably lose, or win the whole thing, and we'll rue the chances that we missed in not beating them and getting to the final ourselves.
Well, after Bombers painted that rosy picture of the upcoming World Cup, Andrew, who's going to win it?
Oh, I can't remember if this was said during the pod or prior to hitting record. I just think if France can afford to ignore the likes of Lefebvre and Mukiele, and not even have them like on a long list or anything, I just think what sort of depth are we talking about? As a tournament in general, I've got to be honest, I'm not looking forward to it. I don't like the format. I don't like some of the political situations around it. None of the people making the decisions are doing it for the benefit of the game or the fans. I'm not looking forward to this in the same way I would have done as a kid. England will be all right. I think Tuchel's pretty pragmatic. France probably win it for me. But to be honest, it's a sideshow to me. we've just talked through our transfer window predictions, Chris. That's the big thing for me. That's the thing I'm going to be looking at. And you look at how many clubs need rebuilds or have new managers or were underperforming last season, so need to go big. Sunderland have got stability. We've got good structures. We've got good processes. I think we can just quietly do our business in the background, throw a few surprises, and for me, I'd much rather Sunderland win the transfer market, if that's such a thing, than England win the World Cup. If I had my way, anyway.
It's funny you say that, Andrew, because I'm the opposite in terms of this World Cup, because I separate the political struggles and the fact that, so I read somewhere, not read somewhere, but I saw a video that the first England game, England-Croatia, is going to be played in a 96 or 98,000 seater stadium, and only 4,000 tickets are allocated to England fans and 4,000 tickets are allocated to Croatia fans. But if you separate the ludicrousness of that situation and the greed and everything else as a tournament spectacle, I'm probably looking forward to it more than I did for Qatar, more than I did for Russia. I'm excited to see, Wilson Isidore play for Haiti in the World Cup. I'm excited to see Curacao. I'm excited to see Cape Verde. Like these teams that we never ever get to watch, and they might get battered every week, but it'll be for entertainment. I've got my sticker book. I've got my stickers. I'm fully on board with it, I think.
There are some nice stories in some of those new nations and that, but there's no jeopardy in the early rounds.
So that I agree with. Yeah.
And ignore the politics or where it is or anything like that. England versus Croatia with 8,000 fans of those two nations and however many tens of thousands of either empty seats or seats that have been bought by the fortunate few who could afford them. I don't think that is a spectacle. That to me sounds like quite soul. I hope I'm wrong. I honestly hope I'm wrong, Bob Murray, and I hope as you sit and watch that, you get what you want from it. And I'm patriotic. I want England to do well, but it doesn't scream to me some of those like magical World Cup days that I remember as a kid.
Yeah, no,
I
so
could be wrong.
that I accept. It's not a France 98. It's not a South Korea, Japan 2002, or Germany 2006. But I certainly think it'll be better than the last two or three. It's
not a Germany 2006 because England are there, of course. That's the biggest difference to that one. But with those countries, it does give the opportunity for a potential moment like Roger Miller in 1990 with just someone coming out of nowhere and just being the star of the show.
Did Saudi Arabia did they beat Brazil, or did they nearly beat Brazil in a previous World Cup iteration, something like that?
Yeah, I remember, was it Senegal who opened the World Cup against France and beat them as well? So you never know with some of these countries who were joining it for the first time might have some big moments. But I think that's a good time for us to wrap up because, as Bomber predicted, we talked far more than we planned. So it just leaves me to say thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you very much, Bomber, once again for your time. Absolutely fantastic predictions. To be fair, quite reasonable predictions. Nothing out there today. So I don't think we'll be looking too much back on those. Don't think it'd be too far from the mark, but we'll see what happens. So thanks again, gentlemen, and thanks again, everyone, for listening. We'll have loads on the Roker Report website, as always. And we talked about the World Cup there, we are planning some updates, regular updates as well, on the World Cup, potentially on some performances by Sunderland players who are over there at the World Cup. So wait and see what we do on that front. But do look out for our daily releases on How We're the Podcast, of course. Look out for those. But from us, it's bye for now.